The one we did, the one we did last week was it's the beginning of our time on the mountain, 40 days and 40 nights. Are you guys still there? Because I'm getting my computer's doing weird things. Oh
We
yeah.
are here,
Mhm.
sweetheart.
It's the beginning of the 40 days and 40 nights. And what I kept noticing was in here, he says, talks about fasting from want. He went to the mountain. He went to, in the Bible, it's the wilderness. He went to the mountain to fast.
Come
He
on.
talks about fasting from want. And he says we can only fast from want by realizing our desire,
Hmm.
realizing in this course is to make real.
Mm-hmm.
But it is also in our current way of using realize is to come to an understanding of.
Yes.
So come to an understanding of our desire. What is my desire? And I come again and again, I desire wholeness. And how do I desire that? Through relationship with truth, with Jesus. I just kept coming to it again and again. You guys, you have to apply this.
You don't
Anyway,
have to do anything.
oh, you don't, but it just deepens.
Yes.
It just
Yes.
gets deeper and deeper.
It does.
Anyway, that's me. I'm a bit enthused.
Yes. No, that's lovely. Same.
Yeah.
And for me, I had this week, this really another word come along with it was the longing. I found that like it kind of even like desire, but longing, this deep, deep longing. That
It's
really did me this week too.
I had that sort of thing. Yeah. You know how he talks about relationship early on in the course? He talks about
Yes,
relationship and
chapter
we
5.
always thought of relationship as relationship with, but it's not. It's just relationship. Well, desire is the same. It's not desire of necessarily. It's just desire. It's
Yes,
like an opening, a request for.
yes.
Yeah. Anyway, that's me. I'll shut up now.
It's done. It's beautiful. It's beautiful
Yeah.
to feel that. It's like, oh, funny enough, we were just translating the fifth chapter 5, the relationship, into Slovakian. And there was like one sentence there, and she read it in Slovakian. And from then on, I just could not continue translating. I was completely done. I was so done.
Mm.
I was cooked. It's like it dropped me into something inside me I don't think I've met before. It was like anything she said after that, I just went like, I can't follow anything after this. That is absolutely
Mm.
beautiful.
Mm.
It's funny you mention it. Oh, da-da-da. Yes. It's been beautiful, guys, having you. I just want to acknowledge that. It's been an
Mm.
amazing year of doing this.
Mm.
It's our last
It
week of
is.
the year, and it's like so for this seemingly innocent gathering.
Seemingly. Yes.
So who do we have first to read? Because it just ties with this so much. Like he gives us one bit and then it ties it with
Yeah. Chantel, you're first.
Set yourself. Acceptance of yourself is acceptance of me. Acceptance of yourself is acceptance of your inheritance. Now is the time to come into full acceptance of the human self as well as the self of unity. It is time for the final merging of the two into one self, the elevated self of form. You have let go the ego, refeed your life, unlearn previous patterns, and now see the difference between the image you hold of yourself and your present self, but still in unguarded moments, in moments in which you would desire peace, memories of your life continue to play within your mind, often still bringing you sadness and regrets. All of these moments you review have brought you here. But I realize that you have not as yet developed the capacity to accept this fully. For most of you, much of what you have considered your mistakes and poor choices have been reconciled. You can see the pattern of your life as clearly now as if a masterful biography had been written of it. It is this clarity that has brought a new haunting to some of you. Your life is being seen more as a whole now. The parts are fitting together. You can see how you have moved from seeming purposelessness to purpose.
You are like an inventor who wasted many years, much money, and endured many hardships over many projects that did not come to fruition, and now has succeeded in inventing just what was always envisioned. This is the moment of fulfillment and desire coming together, the time in which to realise it was all worth it. This is the time of revelation of meaning. You who have so long striven to give meaning to the purposelessness, here see meaning revealed. And yet, you cannot still some of your regrets. The feeling is not as strong as it once was, and you are very unlikely to still experience guilt or shame. But the hurts you have done others may weigh heavily on you now. It is as if, as this mountain peak, you have discovered a lightness of being, and yet within it is this stone of regret. You continue to have a nagging feeling that this stone of regret will always keep you anchored to the self you once were, no matter how high you ascend. It will continue to drag you back. This is the feeling that will prevent you from receiving the secret of succession. It is like the force of gravity, a feeling that you will not be able to remain at this height long enough to benefit from what will be shared here. Hi Tonka, we're up to day 2.8, 40 days.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Alison, you're next.
Part of this feeling arises from erroneous ideas that remain regarding your unworthiness. Part of this feeling arises from the erroneous idea that you can fail even here. These are the temptations that confront those who have dared to ascend the mountain. It is not the height you have attained that causes your fear of falling. It is the depths to which you feel you once descended that calls forth your fear here. These are mainly, in truth, judgments that arise from your conscience, from that part of you that has compared your actions to the laws of man and God and found yourself guilty. Let me ask you now, are these feelings that are attached to your belief that you have harmed others, not feelings of sorrow? Are you not sorry for these actions? Have you not expressed your wish that you had acted differently? Can you see a way to change the past or to make up for what occurred in the past? Next. Thank you.
Thanks, Alison. Kim?
Now is the time for acceptance, even of these actions that you would rather not accept. They happened. They were what they were. I ask you not to forget. If your home is destroyed by a tornado or a flood, rather than adultery and divorce, would you not see the benefit of accepting what had occurred and moving on? You might counter this by saying that if you had been the adulterer, the cause of the divorce, this was different than a tornado or a flood. Yes, this was different, but this difference does not place these actions beyond the idea of acceptance. Conversely, were you the innocent victim of an adulterous mate, a mate whose actions led to divorce, and the destruction of your home, can you not accept that this is something that happened? We leave aside for the moment any considerations of other outcomes of such actions, whether they are negative or positive in your judgment. We look for a simple acceptance of the facts of your life.
Leanne, you're next in your reading tonight.
I could give thousands of examples here, but the point is that we are not looking for degrees of wrong actions or wrongdoing. You all have moments you wish you could reenact, decisions you wish you could change. These actions are unchangeable. This is why simple acceptance is needed. We speak not of forgiveness or even atonement here, for these have been thoroughly discussed earlier. You have all been through the time of tenderness, the time that preceded your giving and receiving of forgiveness, your request for and granting of atonement, your reviewing and unlearning of the perceived lessons of your life. But just as you are called here to accept me, despite possible misgivings, such as religious beliefs, you are called to accept yourself. This unconditional acceptance is necessary. I will give you one final example in order to make our discussion as clear as possible. This is an example from my own life. An example, the idea of which still plagues many of you. This example is that of the crucifixion.
Thanks, Leanne. Cole.
Many of you, for many of you, the crucifixion is among the reasons you hesitate to fully accept me. It is hard for you to believe that my suffering was symbolic of the end of yours, and so much suffering has continued. I will add here the example of my resurrection. It is hard for you to believe that my resurrection heralded eternal life, when death has been the constant companion of those who live since my time. It is difficult for you to believe that by following me, you will not walk in my footsteps. Perhaps you will be granted eternal life, but not until you have suffered as I suffered. This idea would hardly be a joyful idea with which to begin our work together. As was said within this course, my life is the example life. The way in which I have talked of it recently may have led some of you to consider it as a symbolic life rather than an actual life. All of your lives here are symbolic rather than actual. Ta-da! Just as the creation story is symbolic rather than actual. This does not mean that my life did not happen, that it did not occur in time and space, just as yours is occurring now in time and space. What this means is that what occurs in time and space is symbolic, and that it is representative of something more. So let us consider my life again, just briefly, and let us consider that something more it may represent. Next.
I think we're back to Chantal.
Which paragraph are we on?
Say again.
Which paragraph?
20.
Yeah.
Yep.
My life consisted of the same major elements as yours. Birth through childhood, maturity, and with that maturity, action in the world, suffering, death, and resurrection. You have accounts of my actions that begin with the appearance of my form in the world, but that mainly occur during my time of maturity. These accounts do not stress the time of childhood, as it is a time commonly held to be one of innocence. The account of my maturity generally begin with the recognition of who I am. This is symbolic of the idea put forth here that until you are aware of who you are, your life has not literally or symbolically begun. It was in awareness of who I am that my life took on meaning. It could be argued that this awareness existed at my birth, and this too would be accurate, since all births are meant to be eagerly looked forward to as beginnings of I am. Since most births are seen in this way, and most mature lives are not, we concentrate here on mature life.
My mature life thus began with the recognition of who I am, as does yours. This time was followed by my example life, a life that began with the 40 days and 40 nights spent upon the mountain, and continued with my joining with my brothers and sisters, with the bringing of light to darkness, power to powerless, health to the sick, life to the dead. My life touched all those willing to be touched, changed all those willing to be changed. But great unwillingness remained. Willingness was not yet upon mankind. The choice was made collectively to remain in illusion. The choice for continued suffering was made. And so I responded to that choice. An example of response was needed. The example was that of a symbolic gesture. It too was a choice to take all that suffering upon myself and kill it. To say, here is what we will do with suffering. We will take it away once and for all. We will crucify it upon the cross of time and space, bury it so that it need be no more, and demonstrate that new life follows the choice to end suffering.
I did not suffer, for I knew who I was and chose no suffering. This is what is meant by the idea that has been repeated as, I died for your sins. My death was meant to demonstrate that the end of suffering had come, and with it, eternal life. Here then is where you need to make the choice that those in my time could not make, the choice to end suffering. This is the choice I made for all. This is a choice you make for all as well. Willingness is now upon humankind. What my life demonstrated, but needs to be demonstrated anew. But this will not happen if you cling to suffering. If you do not accept yourself, all of yourself, you cling to suffering.
Wow.
This is why you first needed to accept me. To accept me, to accept me is to accept the end of suffering. To accept the end of suffering is to accept your true self.
Wow. Now say something. I think that accept me is not put to question. I think it's just like saying yes. That's that willingness thing. Like, yes, accept yourself. Okay. Mm. You know how we do that thing? Can you allow yourself to be so and so? You say yes, and then it begins to happen. So when we say yes, we manifest that for ourselves. All right, shall we go through this again and see what, not reading it, but anybody would like to mention anything that.
Well, I suppose for me, from paragraph 23 through, his explanation of the crucifixion and the suffering and all that stuff. I mean, this is probably the part of this whole book that I have found the most difficult to really accept what he says about it. Somewhere I'm stuck in, I guess, some old religious thinking, maybe, or I find his thing when he says he wanted to say, here is what we will do with suffering. We will take it away once and for all.
Kill it.
Where he says about killing it, I'm like, what? This does not gel with me. It does not gel with me with how I see Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really get it. It's probably, yeah, like I said, it's the hardest thing for me to.
I know exactly what you mean. I had the same kind of reaction to that.
Yeah. I had it last time we went through the course, and I'll just see what I can do with it. And here it is again, and I'm feeling pretty the same, but I do know something will shift.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's that willingness. But the willingness, when willingness is in there, like, okay, Jesus, then show me how this is done. Like,
I almost feel like he's babying it down into he's putting it down into like baby language for us to understand. I
yes,
suppose I have a criticism of how he's expressing it.
yes. Again, it's triggering something in you, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
A choice to take all that suffering upon myself and kill it. I can't even believe that is.
Don't you want to kill that statement?
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to obliterate it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What if we looked at suffering as finding ourselves in a separated state? We're isolated from the divine. We're isolated from other people as long as we're in this, our bodies. And we're constantly trying to feel complete with things or other people or relationships. And that's the suffering of constantly being disappointed because we do desire unity. We just aren't aware of it or we're trying to grasp it. And I find it interesting that he talked about at his time, nobody was willing to accept it, to hear it. It's like maybe Are we starting to be ready
Mm-hmm.
to say, I think there's a better
Well, we
way?
are. He has said we're on the mountaintop with him. We've come this far and we are on the mountaintop and we're expected to carry on, you know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The another concept of about Jesus being the way is because he said, I am the way, I am the truth. And in the studies I did with the Aramaic language, which is the language that Jesus spoke, the word for I is Ina. And he didn't say I. He said I. He said Ina, Ina. So he really was saying, I am in the I. The I is the one. The name for God is I am. I am in God. I and God are one. I am in God. That's the way.
Mm.
It's a little bit different way of
It is.
understanding.
Yeah.
So it's not the man, it's
Mm-hmm.
what he showed us.
What he says is something interesting right at the end, 26, the last sentence. It's like, if you do not accept yourself, all of yourself, including all this resistance and including all this, yeah, you cling to suffering.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably the key, I think, that sentence. Yeah.
I know I mentioned this last week, that whole story of thinking like, oh, I'm out of 10, you know, I was so close to full acceptance, but it wasn't a full acceptance until it was. And when that
Yeah.
was the full acceptance, that's when the whole shift took place, where I was not only put on top of a mountain, I was put in this 40-day experience that was just so beyond anything I could possibly imagine can happen even in a human life.
Mm.
But it wasn't until he says it, because he said it so well. He says, like, you know, he said, resign as your own teacher. Accept me as your teacher because I will teach you the truth. And he says, have no shame in this. And then he says, you have tried in countless ways and you can still try again, but you will not succeed. And that was the game changer, that all my efforts were ridiculous, really. And that's where I went, okay, well, you're right. I have tried in countless ways, and I can see how I could try again and again, but I will not succeed. And that was my, in a way, surrender. But in that instant, like, you know, I keep saying that, it's like Jesus appears, and it's, you know, he's not a body, he's not an image, but he is presence.
Mm.
He's that I am presence. And when that presence blesses, reminds me of my presence, you know, that's all it was.
Yeah, I keep going
Mind
back to the last chapter again. Like, there's just so much in there because he talks about Adam and Eve and how we represent, Adam and Eve represent us, our entry into the world is, you know, in the body. And he represents our entry through beyond form, but they're both represented in us. Oh, it's just so much in there. I'm just going to have to see this in a different way, but it's interesting for me to see how I actually react about him almost talking in baby talk for us to understand. He has to dumb it down so much
But
so we
it
can
is a
understand.
choice.
Hmm?
Let me just illustrate something else. When I was together with a partner with the mother of my son, we had this, when someone's birthday come, we would just make absolute sure that it was a nice day. And that was the thing we did, right? and it ran really well. And I said, why can't we be like this all the time? Why can't that be? Because it's a choice. So did you notice we actually chose not to fight, not to war? And even so, we decided eventually to go separate ways. We decided to be the best friends for our son. So he never felt like we were separate, that we were in some kind of like, mom, your mom is like this and your dad is like that. We just went, let's just be the best, continue to be the best friends for this sake. And it's been really quite amazing because that's like, let's not suffer. That's that decision.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, let's be, like if I say, hey, let's be best friends. I mean, how many times did we have some kind of clash here? Yeah, rarely, if at all, because we all come with this like, let's heal together. Let's do this, and let's use this amazing manual to help us see another way that we as humans cannot see at this point.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and it's that willingness, like we get together, so like, okay, I know shit, but there is this willingness to, it's like, okay, let's go there. And he's basically saying, don't cling to suffering. So we could say, okay, let's not cling to suffering.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we can. That's all we can do, right? Like, let's not cling to it. Because he says, don't cling to it.
I think I have associated suffering with living in the world. But what my experience was last week with the with the Adam and Eve thing in particular was stepping into presence here in the world without that suffering side of things. And that's an interesting distinction for me. But it's still a necessity to move through into out of form. Oh, okay. I'm just sort of on a tangent, I think, here. Sorry.
It's okay. Well, keep going. Go ahead.
We've been conditioned to think of suffering as punishment. Like we deserve it because we aren't good enough.
Yes. And it's also that thing, like that guilt. It's like, oh, maybe if I just show enough suffering, I will be redeemed. I will be resurrected. Maybe God will take pity on me.
Mm-hmm.
But he goes, no, do this, and then you will continue suffering.
All the ways you can misunderstand.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's why he says, this is why you first needed to accept me. So do you accept Jesus? Say yes.
Yes.
Yes. To accept me is to accept the end of suffering. To accept the end of suffering is to accept your true self. Wow.
I just noticed at the end of 26, if you do not accept yourself, and that's the higher self.
Yes.
I can accept the small self. I just can't accept the higher self.
Mm.
I mean, I'm only human. I make all these mistakes. But to accept that I'm a higher self, that's a little harder to. Mm-hmm. And that's the end of suffering.
Yes. I came up with this idea that as human beings, we are good, bad, ugly, and magnificent. And when I kind of talked about this, I often had people say, it's so easy for me to accept all of it, but the magnificent, that's difficult. It's more difficult than anything. And I think we sometimes hold an image of higher self.
Mm-hmm.
That's scary. And that's why we can't accept it. Like, why wouldn't you accept the higher self? Like, what specifically makes that decision to go, no, I can't accept it? It would have to be some choice there, isn't it? which could be an undercurrent choice to suffering, really.
Mhm. Mhm.
And Leanne, you're going to say something?
The choice part, if there wasn't a response needed from us,
Mhm.
there really would be no choice. It would be like a dictatorship.
Mhm.
So it surely points out the relationship that Grace is asking us to enter into with ourselves. To make the choice to end suffering in ourselves by realizing our true self. Wow, like he did.
But then he goes into the chapter 3 or day 3 where he says, accept our abundance. Boom.
Accept abundance. It's all I'm harping on back to last chapter again. But what came up for me just then was the paragraph 12. It matters not. The power of God is not what is being spoken of here. It is our power that is being spoken of here. Maybe that's what scares me, is our power, the power of the God man,
Mm-hmm.
power of God brought into form, the power of who we are rather than the power of who God is. It's all coming together for me this time. It was very valuable for me to go through this course last time, but I'm just receiving so much more this time.
Because the power we have is intense. Like, just coming back to that experience that I was talking about, I could not open this book for 5 months after that experience because I was already so ignited. I didn't need any extra. Yeah, because that power was just, without me doing anything, oozing. Like I need to do nothing. It was simply happening. And it is like I said, day 5, and I was virtually back on my knees asking for it to stop because the power was so intense. That experience, like it's like everything gets ignited. The mind just can't control anything. And the heart is a brand new thing. It's like what I thought my heart was like an absolute reduction of, and I'm not even talking about the, like he says, the pump that runs the blood, more talking about the center of the being, which is the heart. It's not necessarily even in our chest as it appeared to be.
Does that power represent more responsibility than we'd like to have?
Well, I guess the more than anything was that I didn't know what to do with it at first. Because you go and, like I had to go and teach kids, and I was just sitting there and the kids were getting into the higher state of vibration, and when it was absolutely wild. And so I felt almost like I had to reduce it or put a lid on it to actually function in this world. Are you saying something, Leanne? Got a mic off.
I'm saying, wow, wow, wow. Keep going.
Yes. And this was after 7 days after I got this book For me, it happened at the beginning, not when I finished the book, when I opened the book. Somebody said to me, you will frown at it. And wasn't I frowning at it because I'm a Course in Miracle devotee? And, somebody told me about this book and I just went, oh, come on, there can't be. There's no way. This, like, Course in Miracles is unsurmountable. It there can't be anything better than that. So I kept reading all this and I was frowning, and I realized, wow, she was right. I will frown at this. But then I came to that paragraph 10, chapter 1, and boom, seriously couldn't read it for 5 months. Couldn't open it. Actually, the only thing I could listen to was the epilogue. It's almost like it skipped me the whole book.
Where's that? Is that right at the end?
The epilogue, yes. It's just incredible. Epilogue. Because that was exactly my experience. Like,
oh, I love how you said I had to put a cap on it.
Yeah. And we know this within ourselves somewhere. And so we go, geez, if I open all this, if I open my passion and if I open my love, how am I going to function within this world? But maybe I could say now that it's almost like when I go downtown in here, something leads up in me in a way that I have got no control over. And then the whole town responds to it. There are joyous encounters and they not like, hey guys, you got to read this book. No, none of that at all. It's just like, hey, how's your day? But there is this crazy joy inside that it's just so out of control, really. Like I can't really, it's beautiful. It's very unlike what I expected it to be. So great emergencies are yet to come. But why don't we do this week? Well, let's just give it a shot, like he says. Let's just give it a go and let's go like, all right, let's not cling on to the suffering. What is it the whole week going to be like? We just don't click on suffering. And again, I could just show you something that I find very powerful, and that is the posture. Because it's very easy to suffer when you're like this. But just for fun, straighten up and open up. Fully open up and imagine like, hey, I am that I am. And where is the suffering there? Can you access it even? Think of all the nightmares and be really straight and up and open. And you virtually, how do you encounter suffering there? However, in a slight collapse, even just a tiny little collapse, your head goes to the left or right. And there you go. You're out of this exquisite alignment. And that is a resurrection. You're actually even like physically resurrected. I learned this from NLP because they said to me, when you look up, you can't suffer. You can't be depressed and look up. And it's true. You can try it in your own times. Just look up and try find some misery. It's almost impossible. You have to come kind of down here, and then it's nice and tangible. Anyway, just playing with ideas. None of this is solid, but yeah. Hey, Sam. We just finished reading day 2.
Hi, Sam. I have to say this. It's Sam I am. Sorry. Uh,
Mm.
I think that's a good idea, Cole. It's a great idea, Cole.
Yeah, yeah, you got to practice it. Like okay, it's good to read it, but
Mm.
like put it to practice.
Yeah, because when you're suffering, there's always another choice to be made.
Mm.
And I've got a little thing that I have on my mirror. It was written by Louise Hay. But you stand and look in the mirror, look at yourself, and you say, I really, really love you. You are my best friend. Anyway, it's just the best. And one day I was just feeling so awful and enough of this. And I went and did it, and it took me right out.
Mm. Beautiful, because we're doing it. We're doing suffering.
Yeah, that's right.
Got
There's
to
a, I
remember
mean,
to
there's something to
get
be
the other.
said for, when you talk about feeling feelings, and I know like when the stuff about my mum comes up, and like the other day, I just felt very, very hurt about how it all panned out. And there's something to be said about really allowing the feeling to come to its fruition. But there's a big difference between that and dwelling on it.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a point at which you have to just choose to move through to another place.
Mm-hmm. I've been working a lot with this resist no evil. And that's such a powerful, similar tool to this life thing, like resist nothing. Love your enemies, whatever's within you that looks like an enemy. Meet it with genuine love. Like, hello, come here.
Mm. Yeah.
Mm. Beautiful, guys. Anything else?
Mm.
Mm. I love that line. It says, now is the time to come into full acceptance of the human self, as well as the self of unity. It is time for the final merging of the two into one self, the elevated self of form. Ta-da!
Where's that, Cole?
It's a number 2.1, the very beginning.
Right.
Mm.
And he says in 223, I was just reading that just before you said that. He says, my mature life thus began with the recognition of who I am, as does yours. And then he goes on to say he continued, his life. I continued with my joining with my brothers and sisters, with the bringing of light to darkness, power to the powerless, health to the sick, life to the dead, all that stuff we can look forward to if we're willing. Oh my God. It's a bit confronting, Cole.
That's it. It's like we are so terrified of our power, really.
Yeah.
Mm.
Come in.
Beautiful. Okay. Shall we bless the end of this year and we'll catch you all next week.
Yeah.
Thank you again, all of you, for joining in this
Thank you.
amazing
Thanks,
journey.
Thank you.
everyone.
Sorry, I'm late.
Oh, never
Nice
late.
to have you here.
Thank you.
You.
See you, Anthony.
Thank you,
Bye.
guys.
See ya. See ya.
Love you all.
Yeah.
See you very soon.
Mhm. Bye.